This is Matt Hurt at Obsessive Viewer on Twitter.
This is Tiny at Obsessive Tiny on Twitter.
And this is ObsessiveViewer.com's The Obsessive Viewer Podcast. Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show, each episode. You can find back episodes at ovpodcast.com, find the blog at obsessiveviewer.com, and check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer, which is where you can also find a link to our Facebook group where you can interact with us in between episodes and engage in polls and stuff like that. Episode discussions. Anyway, if you like what you hear and want to support the podcast, please head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review. The more ratings and reviews we get, the easier it will be for people to find the show in iTunes' search results. And if you want to help support the podcast, you can, I already said that. And if you want to show your support with your wallet, you can do that by clicking the donate button on obsessiveviewer.com and also in the show notes of this episode. Or if you want more rewards for donating, you can become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where you can choose from a bunch of different reward tiers, like the $5 make us say anything on the podcast of your choosing reward tier. Any donations made will help pay the fees to keep the podcast running, so we can continue to provide you with our weekly podcast content. And so, Tiny, what are you doing October 14th?
This
year,
taking a half day, kind of relaxing and mixing all cool, shooting some b-ball outside of the school.
Do you ever do that?
A couple of guys who are up to no good.
I don't.
Started making trouble in my neighborhood.
That's not really what I was going for.
No, I'm attending a very, very prestige, high-class A-list event.
Okay, let's not oversell it here.
Hey, let's.
And you're hosting it. With us, we are hosting Shocktober in Irvington 3. That was such a disaster.
My tuxedo is pressed.
Are you really wearing a tuxedo?
Yeah.
Okay. That's gonna be interesting. Anyway, tickets are on sale for Shocktober in Irvington 3. Shocktober in Irvington is a one-night event screening of short horror films from local filmmakers, and it's basically a night where we celebrate local talent, and interview the filmmakers on stage, and also raffle off DVDs, Blu-rays, gift cards to Irvington businesses. All of it's being donated to the Irvington Historical Society. It's our third year doing it. We're really excited for it. And tickets are on sale now at shocktoberinirvington.com. Wow. I just fumbled that. At shocktoberinirvington.com. And as a special bonus for listeners of the podcast, you can get $1 off the price of admission when you use the promo code podcast1 when you buy your tickets. And I'm really excited for it. It's going to be a blast. We're premiering a Ghostbusters fan film. And the Circle City Ghostbusters are actually going to be there with, like, in their costume and everything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
My tuxedo has a cummerbund, not a vest, if anybody was wondering.
That no one was.
Vegas gold specifically is my accent color. Get ready. Be prepared. Again,
you can find all of that at shocktoberinirvington.com. Anyway, and yeah, we're getting a lot of ticket sales. Like today just kind of blew up a little bit. It was kind of awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm super, super excited for that. And hopefully we don't let everyone down. So today on the podcast, we're talking about detective movies in honor of it being our 187th episode. But first we have one piece of news that we're probably not going to spend much time on, but I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't discuss it on the podcast. So Tiny, do you want to introduce the news? Like say what the news was?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Basically, the Dark Tower TV show that was seemingly lost in production hell is going to happen. Mm-hmm. Is going to happen based on the language in the article that we read.
Right.
Which is tremendous news. It's huge. I mean, I'm super excited for it, and the people involved and the creative types that they talked to for the article. It seems like they want to start with like kind of the fourth book, mm-hmm. Which is kind of a background, flashback book for those who haven't read the series. And it's really exciting. I think it's a fantastic place to start off with a series. I think they can continue on with what they've done with the comic books. There's a lot of great content in the comic books. So basically, in my opinion, since they're doing the movies, I think this is the ideal situation for television, is that they're going to tackle the stories they are on the television show. So like literally, this is like the best case, like this is the best news that I could have heard regarding the Dark Tower on television. It's just amazing. I'm really happy.
Okay, so
it better be perfect.
I know, right? So, okay, for background, the Dark Tower, obviously we've talked about it a lot on this podcast. The Dark Tower is, for me personally, it's my favorite book series. It might, I hesitate to say this because it doesn't have the time associated with this, but it might honestly be my favorite thing. Yeah. Just my favorite thing. And I love it so much. So Dark Tower is a 7-8 book series of Stephen King's, that it's his magnum opus. It's a Western sci-fi horror, action adventure series that just basically ties together so much of what his work is and his career embodies. And so they're making the movie. They've wrapped filming, they're editing, and they're in post-production now on the movie The Dark Tower, which is set to premiere February 17th, 2017. And so this news that they're going to have a TV show alongside it, this is so refreshing and so exciting because this was the plan originally back in, I think, 2008, when Ron Howard was set to make it. He was going to make a movie series with TV shows in between each movie, set to kind of flesh out the backstory and the universe. And so Tiny and I, when we worked together, we would spend so many hours of our lives just discussing what it would mean to adapt this work. And when we talked about it, Wizard and Glass, which is the 4th book, which is the majority of the book, is the background of the main character's like childhood and his formative years, and kind of how he became who he is. That was always, in my mind, this was what the TV series is going to cover. And what I love about it is that that's exactly what's going to happen. And it's not only that they're going to do it, it's that they're going to do it, and they said that they are going to stick a lot more to the source material than they are for the movie, which I'm fine with them going off book or anything. Mm-hmm. But I like that they have it in mind to, keep it as close to the book as they can, or more close to the book. And then also the fact that when we say it's really happening, we mean it's really happening. Yeah. Like the article, which is on EW and written by Anthony Bresnikan, who is his coverage of the Dark Tower movie and the adaptation, everything Stephen King, is just ridiculously good. Yeah, it's amazing. He's the one that kind of championed that the Dark Tower be on the cover of Entertainment Weekly a few months ago. And it's so nice. It's so amazing. But anyway, so what we mean when we say that it's really happening is that MRC, the company, or one of the production companies that's co-funding the Dark Tower movie, they're committing to this is so awesome to say this. They're committing to a first season. They don't have like an outlet yet. They don't have a distributor, but they are funding the first season of the TV show. And that is just amazing, because it's not like someone is. It's not like when Ron Howard and Brian Grazer had it and they were in talks with Universal. It's not like Universal was. It's not like they got a pilot order for the episode for NBC. This is like they're making it and then they're going to shop it around, and it's just. Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Yep. And MRC is the production company who makes House of Cards.
Yes.
So they have a history with Netflix, a very, very successful history with Netflix. Mm-hmm. and I used the word ideal earlier, like the ideal scenario, I think the ideal delivery system would be Netflix.
Absolutely.
Which is kind of almost a selfish thing, because like I want to binge the crap out of it in 2 days, like take off days of work to binge it seriously.
Yeah.
And then watch it whenever I want. Because that's what's great about House of Cards or anything that's released original content on Netflix is you can just watch it whenever you want. You don't have to pop in DVDs, you don't have to have them with you or anything like that. It's always there. And I often have the Dark Tower companion book, which is essentially like an encyclopedia for the entire
concordance.
The concordance, yeah. It's basically an encyclopedia for the entire universe that Stephen King created, and it's like 1,100 pages. I have cracked that open several times, just be like, what was this one character? Where did they first appear, and what was their origin or whatever? And like, I think that'd be so cool to do with a TV show.
Oh, absolutely.
Just hop on Netflix and be like, what was this one line from this one episode? And you just hop on there and find it and watch it. And
that's the one thing, and this is all early and everything, but if it goes to Netflix, like, I hope that it's, the one downside to going to Netflix is that it doesn't guarantee that it will have like a meaty Blu-ray release.
It's true.
Which, I mean, my physical collection has gone down, or like my physical buying of DVDs and Blu-rays has gone down considerably recently with the advent of streaming services and everything. But I mean, obviously that's like, I make a point to buy the Game of Thrones Blu-rays because they are so filled with content. And like I've double dipped the extended editions of Lord of the Rings because those have just ridiculous amounts of content, and I want the Dark Tower to have that. But
that's true. I would enjoy that.
Yep. Anyway, so let's see. There was and just really quickly, and we'll move on to our main topic. But it's tiny. Okay, so this news hit on. They released the news on Stephen King's birthday, which was I think the 21st of September. And it was like I wasn't having a crappy day at work, but it was just kind of like I just wanted to go home. I think I had just gotten off like a really crappy phone call with someone, and I was like, oh God. And then like I was going on my break, and then I looked at my phone and I saw that Tiny You had sent me the link to it, and I read it, and I was like it was just like beaming with happiness. Like I was smiling like an idiot. It literally almost made me cry. Like I got a little teary-eyed just knowing that this is happening.
And it was interesting for me because usually you're the one who's giving me news,
right?
Or like I send you something, you're like, yeah, I saw that already. I'm like, no, but like, and what's awesome about this is they created like a poster already.
Yeah,
and it's a map of the location where the fourth book takes place. And just to see that, I'm kind of a map nerd. It's goofy. But just to see that, I thought was super cool. All these locations and different places that had been described ad nauseum in the book, to see them physically represented in a map was just like surreal for me. And they put a famous quote over, like that lays over the map. It's really cool. Like it just further demonstrates their commitment to this, and it's really mind blowing to me.
Absolutely, and it's the quote is, "Let the word and the legend go before you," and it's so great. But this is in keeping with what they've been doing essentially each month for the Dark Tower. Is like on the 19th of each month, which is a number that bears some significance in the greater story. But on the 19th of each month, they've released, information. Like they've had Stephen King posted a picture of the Horn of Eld saying one last time around, I think. And then like there was in I think September 19th was a photo of Tom Taylor, who's going to be playing Jake, standing in front of a doorway in a setting that is bears some very big significance to the series, especially in book 3 with his like that character's iconic quote right next to it. Go on, there are other worlds than these.
Yeah.
And it's just like seeing this, like I'm getting chills just talking about it. And it's to the point, like, I don't, like, I know that I'm setting, like, judging from past episodes on this podcast, judging from the history of the podcast, it seems like maybe I'm setting myself up for another Interstellar thing.
Yeah.
But I don't care. Me
either.
It's like, this is it. This is my Star Wars. This is my Force Awakens, essentially.
Uh-huh.
And it's just, and it's so great. It's so exciting. Like, yeah.
It is.
Yep.
It is. Yep.
Like, I actually had a dream, I think it was Friday night, where, like, I had a dream where I went to see The Dark Tower in the movie theater. Like, and it wasn't like I went to see it. It wasn't like I was watching the movie. It was like the dream was me buying the ticket in the theater and then seeing it on like the little marquee thing by the doors to the auditoriums in the theater.
That's pretty crazy.
It's very crazy. Yep. So look forward to February, in the middle of February, when I have a very disappointing experience.
I hope not.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure I won't. And I'm sure we won't be disappointed in it. And it's like, that's the thing. Like, people get so hung up on the, and I've said this before, so I'm just repeating old things, but people get so hung up on the adaptation. I am so ready for it to just be just the Dark Tower. I want it to be that world. That's my main concern. I don't care if it's close to the books, as long as it's true to the books. And
right.
I have no qualms with it so far. So
me too.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting when we cover it on the podcast.
Yep.
So anyway, having said all that, like, I mean, we can go on for much longer for that.
Yeah. We have.
Yeah. Just wait. Like, next month they're going to release footage. We're going to have a full episode on it. I don't even care, Tiny, if you agree. We just are. But we must go on because there are other topics than these. So this week on the podcast, we're going to just dive into our main topic. We're talking about, Tiny, what are we talking about?
Detective movies.
This is episode 187 of The Obsessive Viewer. So we were talking about detective movies because 187 is the police code for homicides, right? Or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure. So it's very... That was the idea. So...
Get it?
Do you guys get it?
Do you get it?
God. So anyway, Tiny, what to you makes a good detective movie? Like, when you sit down and you're like, I just want to watch this. I want to watch a movie that's about, detectives, and it's a movie. What is your criteria for a good detective movie?
At first I was kind of thinking like mystery, because I think that's what really draws people to these kind of movies, is people just really enjoy mysteries, and they like not knowing what happens, what's going to happen, what did happen. They like to guess about who did this or what this means. I think that's why people are drawn to the genre and the subgenre so much. But really, I mean, I think sometimes the mystery is only part of it. I think following a detective through their process is really fascinating because it's such an undesirable job, but it requires such an intelligent and like skilled person to pull it off. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about like Sherlock Holmes. He's the greatest detective of all time. He was ridiculously brilliant, and these crimes are, the crime of murder is what most people consider to be the worst crime that you can possibly commit. And so I think there's this, just the aura surrounding the concept of homicide, of murder, and people find that taboo very fascinating. And for me, it's all those things mixed together. I don't think you necessarily need to have, it needs to be a serial killer, or it needs to be this person or that person. It can be a private detective, it can be a police officer, it can be an FBI agent, or I don't think time period matters. I mean, you can have something like Minority Report, which takes place in the future, but you can have something like Sherlock Holmes that takes place 200 years ago. So it's a really diverse genre, and to me it's really just about the process that I find interesting. The different ways that detectives detect and approach solving a murder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll echo a lot of those sentiments. Something that I really like about the detective movie genre, or the kind of noir genre, mystery genre, what have you, is that it takes what's usually like really interesting characters, like really interesting, like the gumshoe detective, or the kind of dark, mysterious characters at the forefront of the investigations of the mystery, and pairs it with what is ideally a very engaging mystery and very interesting thing that is going to hold your attention, even if it's a MacGuffin.
Right.
That is just to service characterization or what have you. It's still worthy of. It doesn't take away from it, because usually they have some really good characters. Ideally,
totally. Yeah.
Or they play with themes, or they serve to. They're created to serve a message.
And detectives usually, like the characters themselves, usually run the gamut. I mean, you could have a really flawed detective who's like an alcoholic and beats his wife and just is a terrible person, but he has the drive to solve a murder, which is, seen as like a moral thing. Or
right.
You can have this absolutely clean cut, by the book detective who's the polar opposite of that, and really struggles with trying to find a way to get inside the mind of the person who killed this person. And because they're so clean cut, there's an interesting spectrum of detective characters, I think. And
a lot of times they pair those two archetypes up pretty well, and it's always to good effect.
Yep.
So we're kind of work from a set list of detective movies. Obviously, we aren't going to cover everything, and we do have some gap movies that we may address later. But there's this kind of a set list of detective movies. I kind of threw it out there to Tiny, and we kind of worked through what we wanted to discuss. First of all, let's just dive right in. 1941, Tiny.
Yep.
Do you want to bring this one up, since the next ones are kind of going to be a brief one for me?
Sure. It's 1941's The Maltese Falcon, and this is famous for being a detective movie, but it's also it kind of launched a new subgenre of detective movies, or it made that genre famous. Noir investigation movies, or noir movies. Really took off in the 40s, and I don't know if the Maltese Falcon invented the genre, but it kind of perfected it and made it really famous. This movie won some Oscars and had some really famous people in it, Humphrey Bogart. So the movies, a lot of people, when they think of noir, or when you're researching or looking up what noir is, this always comes up. It really just launched the subgenre. And it's a really famous movie. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember being surprised at how well it holds up. Because 1941, this is like pre-color movies even. Like, this is an old movie, and but it's part of what I mentioned, in the introduction to this topic. It's a very timeless story, because people have been getting murdered for a long time. But no, the story and the concepts involved with the story translate across time, if you will, which that's a weird way to put it, but it holds up really well. When's the last time you saw this?
The last time I saw this movie was about, I would say probably about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And it just holds up incredibly well. It's such a fun and engaging mystery, first of all, but it's so much fun because Humphrey Bogart is just amazing in it. Like, he carries the movie so well, and every time he's on screen, it's like, this is the type of detective that I want at the forefront of this type of movie all the time. Like it's such a fun ride to watch him go through the experience. He's got this kind of this, I don't want to say cocksure attitude, but it's kind of like this very like he knows the score. He knows what's going on. He can see through people's through their BS or their lies, and it's the mark of a great detective on a screen or in a movie, because he's just so good at his job, and he's one of those like classic kind of private eyes that is just it sets a tone for the rest of the genre or of the detective movie subgenre. It sets a tone for me personally that I really enjoy.
Absolutely. And what's kind of memorable about the movie for me is Peter Lorre, who I think I focused on more than Humphrey Bogart. He's a Hungarian actor he was in a lot of Hitchcock movies, and he was in Casablanca. He was in M. A lot of famous movies from the 40s all the way through the 60s. He's a Hungarian actor, but he has very distinct features. He seemed to like always play a nefarious character or a villain or something, and it's funny because you always know he's kind of the bad guy in a way, or he's kind of a sneaky kind of character. But I just always love watching the guy, and anytime I see him, I just always loved seeing Peter Lorre on the screen. And he's delightfully creepy in this movie. So yeah, I love Peter Lorre in this. He's a fun villain usually. So.
Yep, I agree. I need to watch this movie again. It's been too long.
I love the poster they have as the picture on IMDb. This one of the like catchy phrases or something on the poster. It depicts Humphrey Bogart holding 2 Colt 45s, and it says, "A story as explosive as his blazing automatics," which is such like a 1940s.
That is so
great. Like phrase. That's funny.
I love that style of poster art too. There was on a bit of a tangent when I was at I think it was Indiana Comic Con back in I think May. There was this artist who was selling prints of modern movies or contemporary movies that like prints that were in the style of that type of art. So like he had like Back to the Future and Star Wars, just in that like kind of 40s 50s like noir or kind of B-movie art style. And it was really tempting to buy one, but I didn't.
Yeah, that's a really lost art. Kind of before trailers, you kind of had to hedge a lot of your bets on the poster for a movie, because that's how people got interested in movies. It's kind of a lost art. Now it's all about trailers.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Which is something we kind of talked about a little bit in our fall 2016 movie preview episode, like the poster for Other People. Just super generic.
Right.
Just super dull.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I'll go ahead and bring us into our next one. This is going to be a brief one because I haven't actually watched them in a little while. Or I watched one a couple years ago, but I'm pairing them up because they're from the same filmmaker. They're from the 40s, or no, the first one's from 1949. The next one's from 1963. There are 2 Akira Kurosawa movies. The first is Stray Dog, which is the one that I've seen most recently. This movie is about a rookie homicide detective who loses his gun, or his gun is stolen from him. So this is kind of this list, it's probably only like my 3rd favorite of the detective movies, but it's okay. So it's from 1949. It's one of Kurosawa's like post-war contemporary Japanese movies. So he's famous for his samurai movies, Yojimbo, Seven Samurai, and he's famous for his like feudal Japan movies. So with his more contemporary movies, I feel like I don't know if they're underseen or underappreciated or what, but not a lot of people, like you say Kurosawa and you think, Seven Samurai and those other movies, Rashomon, Throne of Blood. But Stray Dog doesn't really get much play, I don't think, but it's really worthy of it because it's such an incredible movie. It's, as I said, it's about a homicide detective trying to search for his lost gun, but it's so much more because it shows, it shows what it's like for what it's like in post-war Japan, like occupied Japan, and it's kind of plays with a sense of like themes of like losing your country a little bit, and having to go through all of these obstacles, like all of these things that wouldn't normally be like that if it wasn't like right at the end of a world war. And there's some really great, one thing that is kind of a trademark of Kurosawa is that he does a lot with weather, and it's kind of a running theme throughout all of his movies. So this movie takes place during a very hot summer, and as the movie progresses, it switches over to like kind of like rainy evening and rainy night, and it's hard to explain, but I really, really love this movie. It's really engaging, and it's has a lot of subtext to it as well, and that's something that I greatly appreciated about it. And it also has I feel like it also helped influence Seven a little bit, because throughout the movie, it's the main character, played by Toshiro Mifune. He is paired up with a veteran, like he's a rookie homicide detective. He's paired up with a veteran detective who kind of takes him under his wing. And it echoes a lot to me. It echoes a bit of the dynamic in Seven. So I don't know if Andrew Kevin Walker, when he wrote Seven, I don't know if he was influenced by Stray Dog or what have you, but it's a really great movie. I believe it should be available on Hulu. I recommend checking it out because it's a really great movie. And then next up, this one's going to be a little bit shorter. And it's more of a crime thriller. I don't know if it would really fall under detective movies per se, but High and Low. Tiny, have you seen any of these movies, by the way?
I haven't seen either of these, no.
Okay. So High and Low is a 1963 Kurosawa movie, also starring Toshiro Mifune. It's about an executive of a shoe company. He becomes a victim of extortion when his chauffeur's son is kidnapped and held for ransom. So this movie is really, it's available to rent. No, I'm not going to say that. Okay. This movie is really great at showing again, it's another kind of contemporary Kurosawa movie. It's really great at showing the class, like the different class system, or the like the upper class, like more rich person, and the dichotomy between them and like the servants or the people who serve them, and it showcases that type of socio-economic or socio-political, what have you, dynamic, and it's really engaging, and I haven't seen it in a while, but it's really good. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite of Kurosawa's, but it's definitely up there.
Nice.
Yep. So yeah. Do you have anything to say about those?
No, I'm definitely gonna need to check them out. I know I own one of them. I honestly don't remember. It sucks having my DVD collection in the garage.
Right. That is a bummer.
Yeah.
Let me see if that's on Hulu. But it's funny because, as a slight tangent, first of all, anytime I bring up Kurosawa, I get in my head, because when I was a teenager, I was such an obnoxious, pretentious douchebag about it.
Yeah, so, you were.
I really was. High and Low.
Not anymore.
Oh, let's not get carried away here. No, but High and Low is on Hulu, which it's funny because, just as a brief aside, it's part of the Criterion Collection, and we talked about Filmstruck a while ago. You remember that, Tiny?
No.
Okay, well, Filmstruck was the...
Sorry, I don't remember.
No, you're fine. It was a brief thing. It was a news segment.
Okay.
But I think it was early summer or late spring. But it's Filmstruck. It's a streaming service that's supposed to be premiering in fall of this year. And one of their big things is that it's partnering with Turner Classic Movies, and it's going to have the entire Criterion Collection. And it's going to, supposedly, Hulu is going to lose the Criterion Collection, and Filmstruck is going to have it on their streaming service.
Oh, okay.
So it's a lot of like prestige or art house movies and classic movies. But I don't know when that's going to happen. So if you have Hulu and you're interested in watching Stray Dog or High and Low, check it out now, because they might be disappearing from Hulu. I don't know.
Gotcha.
Yep. So anyway, so tangents aside and everything, Stray Dog and High and Low are great. Check them out. Tiny, do you want to bring up the next one?
Yes, 1971's The French Connection. This is a movie famous for a car chase. Mm-hmm. That's kind of its claim to fame, but I think it kind of was integral in some other ways because this was kind of one of those first like narco investigation kind of movies that kind of gave rise to shows like Miami Vice or movies like Blow, like we like. I mean, any number of drug investigation type movies or stories, or this movie kind of tackles the influx of the heroin trade in New York City, and it's kind of it's interesting to watch because narcotics investigation was kind of in its infancy at the time, and to try to see these detectives how to figure out how to investigate this and what to how to go about it was an interesting process. It also shines a light on like the corruption and kind of the use of force, the basically the violation of people's civil rights, and how the NYPD was very brazen with that during certain time periods. You can reference the movie Serpico, kind of tackles that issue, and so it's disturbing to see those things, but it's also kind of fascinating to take a peek at that culture and how it was a very accepted thing back in the time, back in these days when this investigation was taking place. Mm-hmm. It's a really cool movie, and Gene Hackman was really popular at the time, and he's a great actor. It's kind of fun to watch him kind of just be a dick. It's a cool movie, and I think it should be famous for more than just the car scene or the car chase. I think there's a lot of cool stuff in this movie to enjoy. So it's like I said, I think it deserves a lot more credit than it gets. It's a cool movie.
I agree. I haven't seen this movie in quite a long time, actually, so I can't really say that much about it. But I mean, it is a really great movie, yeah. And it's one that I plan to revisit fairly soon. And I wish I would have had time to revisit it before talking about detective movies on this episode. But yeah, I have fond memories of it. I watched it in high school, I think, for the first time, and it was one that kind of stuck with me quite a bit. Yeah,
it's the remastered version they released on Blu-ray is a really good remaster.
Nice.
I actually own it. They did a really good job remastering it. It's nice.
Very nice.
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, that's the French Connection. And next up, we're going to just dive into 1974's Chinatown. And this movie is, again, it's one I haven't seen in a long time, but it's stuck with me over the years because, it's very well regarded, and it's celebrated as having a very great screenplay. Like the actual, it's discussed in screenwriting books just about how great it is, and like that kind of iconic twist in it is kind of really, really fantastic. I won't spoil it or anything, but I really love it. And Jack Nicholson is fantastic. For those who don't know, Chinatown is about a private detective hired to expose an adulterer finds himself caught up in a web of deceit, corruption, and murder, which plays up so many great aspects of the detective movie genre. Mm-hmm. And it's perfect. I really love it, and I need to actually buy it.
Me too.
Yeah. It's a shame I don't own it. Tiny, what do you think of Chinatown?
It's a classic for a reason, and it's on not just like top 100 movies of all time lists, but like top 20 of all time lists. And it's on there for a reason. It's one of the best movies ever made, I think. Mm-hmm. What I appreciate a lot about it from a detective standpoint is that it really demonstrates how you can really fall down a rabbit hole, essentially. And it's like, if you follow the right pieces of information and the right clues, you think you're just investigating, an adulterer, which is how this starts, or you think you're investigating a missing person or something, a murder. But really, you find out, it's about one of the most powerful men in town, committing a murder, and this guy's involved with a ring of conspirators who control the entire city of Los Angeles, and it just turns into this whole conspiracy, and it's a far-reaching thing that you tap into, and it's like, the detective doesn't know how to go about tackling this, and he doesn't know who to trust and how deep does this thing go, and that's what really stuck out to me about this movie. It starts out with such a simple adultery investigation, and it turns into a regional conspiracy, essentially. It's just the evolution of that story is really fascinating. It's really a shame that Roman Polanski is such a scumbag,
right?
Because he makes a hell of a movie. And this is his best work, I think. I think a lot of people would agree with that. He's a really good filmmaker, but he's also an a-hole.
Right.
But yeah, Chinatown's just a classic movie, and this is when Jack Nicholson was at his peak, and it's, if you have not seen it, go see it right now. Just go buy it. You'll want to watch it again.
Absolutely.
Great movie.
Yep, I agree. And like I said, I'm gonna have to check it out again and buy it.
Yep.
So Tiny, do you want to bring us into the next one?
Absolutely. This is 1995's Seven, which I submitted to our Vault in a Vault episode.
That's right.
Yeah. So I mean, reference that episode, please. I gushed over this movie. I feel like this movie just, it's one of those movies that just sticks with you. I think there are so many people out there. It's very polarizing because I think there's so many people out there who've seen the movie one time and never want to see it again because it absolutely decimates you. But then there's other people like myself. I've probably watched this movie at least a dozen times, which is crazy because it's one of those movies that you have such an adverse reaction to because it's so off-putting and it's such a terrible thing, and it's really not. It's not a happy movie. I mean, there's not really good things that happen in this movie. It's very depressing and dark and sad and terrifying. And the thing is, I think a lot of people find entertainment and find find out things about themselves when they explore those kinds of stories. Other people just don't understand it, and they like to have a laugh when they watch a movie or whatever. And this Seven is kind of the polar opposite of that. You're not going to feel good when you leave the theater or when you shut it off. It's going to make you think, and it's just hard to watch, and it's hard. It's an experience you go through. It's not just a movie. You're not just enjoying a story. It's an experience that you have. And there's so many good things to point to in the movie. It has an incredible script, written by Andrew Kevin Walker, and it has this incredible visual style to it. Most people are probably familiar with David Fincher. He has such a filtered look at his movies. Always have a certain filter to them, and I think that's how he makes them unique while still having his own style. And this movie, I think, really introduced that concept about David Fincher, and I think he really found himself as a filmmaker with this movie. It's just, I'm sure most people have seen it. I mean, it's like, you're probably familiar with this. I don't need to describe what happens to you. It's about a serial killer who chooses his victims based on the 7 deadly sins. That's all you need to know. If you haven't seen it, again, check this movie out. I think it's, I don't know if I'd say it's one of the best movies ever made, but I would have no problem with putting it on a top 100 list.
I agree completely.
Yeah. I put it in our vault.
Right.
I mean, that's just my opinion, but I think it's just a really incredibly crafted movie.
Absolutely. And that was in OV38, by the way, Into the Vault 2, which it's funny because, just brief aside, that's the episode where we announced obsessivebooknerd.com, like announced it being a thing. And we also teased the secular perspective for the first time.
Oh, wow.
So anyway.
Interesting.
But yeah, 7, it's just, I think it's my favorite movie on this list.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, it's like you said, it really sticks with you. There are images and concepts in that movie that will haunt me for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It's just, just it's incredible, and it pairs up two really great. First of all, two really great actors, Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, as two kind of not opposing, but they're two detectives that are very different.
Different methods, and that pairing is so great. Somerset and Mills, and just the way that because it's not played up like it's not. There's the right amount of drama between them, and the right amount of conflict. There isn't that much conflict. Like, I'm not saying that they're at each other's throats the entire movie, but there are different methodologies and there are different methods, and the way that Somerset is kind of guiding Mills through what is his last week before his retirement. Somerset's. And he's kind of guiding Mills through this new division that he's in and everything. And it's just the little like bits and pieces of just cop things or police things or detective things, really. Like, I'm thinking about when Somerset just gets the library records for a potential suspect, or they check it. It's kind of an under the table kind of thing, because it's, kind of not really legal. Yeah.
The way that they do it, but it's just like one of those types of leads, those little instances of a character using their position and using their history of the position and knowing how to kind of navigate this investigation is just something that I kind of eat up all the time when I see these types of movies.
Yeah.
Because it's great world building. It's great at showing us what type of world these people live in, and it informs so much of the characters. Seeing them like know their way around a crime scene or know their way around certain things, and also showing them at the crime scenes. Like, I don't want us to go off of 7 without talking about that, because there are some scenes where they're just kind of investigating. They're like, there's a dead body with a face and a bunch of SpaghettiOs, and just the imagery in this movie is just outstanding.
It is the worst kind of art, because the crime scenes are works of art, and that's an awful thing to say, but they really are. That's what they are, and it's effective because it sticks with you, and you can't see one of these crime scenes and not react to it.
Right.
Everyone who's seen them is either sickened or fascinated or both. It's a form of taboo that I used that word earlier. It's really surprising that like this movie exists, because I mean, just imagine trying to shop this movie around to movie studios and telling them what is involved. And if you see this movie, there is not one scene in the entire movie that's like, oh, that's pretty, or that's nice, or that's lovely. Everything is dark, everything is gritty, everything is covered in a film of like despair. It's just, and like, we're not selling it very well, because it's just such a dark movie. It's just the nature of the movie. And like I'm one of those people who finds that unbelievably fascinating, and I think it's an incredible universe, or like an incredible situation in which to tell a story. It's not something I want to experience, but if someone else has to experience it, it's amazing that I get to watch it, or, see how that happens. Again, the process the detectives go through, like how do you process something like that? It's just like, it's beyond human comprehension to see something like that more than once and be able to go home and go to sleep at night. It's just one of those kind of movies that it just sticks with you, and everyone who sees it probably has a very, very memorable and precise reaction to it. And I think that there are not a lot of movies like that. I mean, it's very unique in that respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree completely. Do you want to bring us into the next one?
Absolutely. 1997's L.A. Confidential.
Yes.
It's kind of interesting. It's another story that kind of tackles the corruption of Los Angeles in the first half of the 20th century. which is based in some truth. Los Angeles was a very, very corrupt city for its first couple decades of existence, before it really took off. And LA Confidential is just kind of, it's a very fun kind of movie. Like it has a very Hollywood feel to it, and it feels like it's produced, but like in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. It's kind of hard to explain that way. It's kind of tabloidy too. It has that kind of tabloid feel to it, and that's one of the main shticks of the movie. Through Danny DeVito's character, he's the editor or something, or of a local tabloid.
He kind of
Hush Hush.
Yes, Hush Hush.
Yeah,
he kind of introduces us into the world. Like
yeah.
He has the opening.
He's a narrator.
Yeah, and it's just that. I mean, that's the perfect piece of storytelling device to put in there, because it just sets the mood so perfectly.
It does, yeah.
It's worth mentioning. Worth mentioning. Jesus Christ. We should mention. Well, hi,
oh my God.
Jesus. No, but we should mention first and foremost that director of LA Confidential, Curtis Hanson, actually just recently passed away last week.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. He directed LA Confidential along with 8 Mile. And
it's an interesting combination.
It is. It is. I always thought it was, the only reason I know that like offhand is just because it was always interesting to me that 8 Mile was directed by the guy who made LA Confidential.
Right.
Yeah, he also made Too Big to Fail. But anyway, so that's too bad, because LA Confidential is fantastic. This might be my second favorite of the list after 7.
It's up there for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish they would have picked a different actress than Kim Basinger to play that role. I just don't think she's that great of an actress.
Yeah.
I didn't really like. I mean, because the character is hugely integral to the story, and could be a fantastic character, but with Kim Basinger at the reins, I think it was a very it just could have been so much better than what she did. I'm just not really a fan of hers.
Yeah, it's funny because reading the trivia, director Curtis Hanson stated that Kim Basinger was the first and only choice for the role of prostitute Lynn Bracken.
Jeez.
Not only that, but she actually turned it down 3 times before finally accepting.
Wow.
And at the time, and this is pretty interesting, she hadn't had a movie since 1994, and hadn't had a hit since the original Batman in 1989. Mm-hmm. And so this was a big comeback for her. But the part was small, and the movie was actually a disappointment, box office disappointment. Yeah.
Interesting.
But she eventually had her comeback.
Right.
But what I love so much about this movie is that, first of all, the plot is as corruption grows in 1950s LA, 3 policemen, 1 straight-laced, 1 brutal, and 1 sleazy, investigate a series of murders with their own brand of justice. And what I love about it is that it takes these 3 characters, these 3 central characters, played by Kevin Spacey, Russell Crowe, and Guy Pearce, and they create, what's created in this movie are 3 incredibly well-rounded, or 3-dimensional characters that all have their own specific style, and the way that they intermingle and mix together throughout the movie is just so interesting to me. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier when talking about how a great detective movie will pair up people who wouldn't ordinarily make a good team or be good on paper. And then it's just them working a case together is a great way to showcase their different methods and their different thought processes and everything. And that's a way that a movie can have a lot of fun with writing, with the screenplay, with the characters, because you have these people that go about things different ways coming together to tackle something that is oftentimes out of their range, or out of their out of their range, out of their scope of their abilities, and it's the team of them working together to solve it is what's so strong. And what I love about this movie is that these 3 characters are really effective and they're really strong. Yeah, and just the aesthetic of 50s LA is just so great. Like the way that this movie just looks is like it's like that tabloid skeezy, scuzzy 50s dirtiness, the griminess without being like a gritty police drama. It's like this kind of Hollywoodized griminess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's you're taking something that's gritty and grimy and you're trying to make it look nicer than it is. You're trying to cover it with a coat of gloss and make it look nicer than it is.
Perfect. Yes, that's the perfect.
It's the Hollywoodization, if you will, which is not a word, but that's what it is, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly, and it's very tongue in cheek in this instance and it's just. It fires on all cylinders. It's amazing. And the story, the actual mystery is really engaging. There's some really interesting turns in the plot that I didn't see coming when I saw it. And just, I love it. Even the kind of gun battle at the end, is like really thrilling, like really well executed.
Yeah.
I love it. I love this movie. It's, LA Confidential. So yeah.
One of my favorites.
Me too.
Yep.
Okay, so next up, Tiny, is 8mm, and you have more of an affinity for this movie than I do. I watched it for the, I think, first time with you when I was kind of like super tired. But it's from 1999, and why don't you take us through what makes 8mm so great?
This is the second movie penned by Andrew Kevin Walker that we've mentioned on this list.
That's right.
And the third time I think we've mentioned him. He has an incredible affinity for tackling very dark subjects, and making something that's so dark it's almost mythic, making it accessible for a regular audience. Not to say that he dumbs things down or simplifies things or panders to an audience. He just makes them accessible, and I don't know how he does it. It's really impressive what he's capable of doing with something so dark and like so untouchable, something that people don't even realize is something that exists. And the subject of this movie is a snuff film, and snuff films they're almost like a myth, like a mythical thing. Like you can ask 1 million people around the world if they've ever seen a snuff film, and anyone who tells you yes is probably lying, and anyone who tells you no doesn't even realize that it's a possible thing that could exist. For those who don't know, a snuff film is a film where a real person gets killed, like someone actually gets killed. It's not a simulation or, a film trick. Someone actually is murdered, and someone films it for public consumption. And that is like just one of the most disturbing things I can imagine, that someone would want to see that, and that would be a pleasurable thing. It's sort of, snuff films are associated with like pornography, and it's beyond taboo, but it's close enough to taboo that people associate it with pornography. And apparently people who do enjoy snuff films, there's like a sexual gratification with that. I don't know. I don't understand it, but this movie dives into that world, and it's not really something I wanted to know about. I mean, and I don't think most people do. There's tons of people who would just like, I'm not going to watch this movie because I don't want to know about that world. I don't want to look at it, even if it's just fiction. I can completely understand that, because it's like I said, it's not taboo. It's beyond taboo. It's just wrong. It's morally incorrect, and there's no argument. I can't understand why this exists, but it's a really fascinating movie to go into that world. And the most fascinating thing about it for me is Nicolas Cage's character. He plays a private investigator who's hired by the widow of a multimillionaire, maybe even a billionaire, because she finds what looks like a genuine snuff film on an 8mm reel in a safe after her husband dies. So she hires him to investigate it to see if it's an actual thing or what happened to this girl. Is this a real snuff film? And what's so interesting about it is that Nicolas Cage's character is entering a new phase of his life. He's married and he just became a father. He has like a newborn baby. And this investigation requires him to go on the road and literally immerse himself into the universe of like underground pornography and the potential universe for a snuff film. And that's, it's a really fascinating juxtaposition to see him wrestle with, you know, the fact that he's a loving husband and father on one hand, but he needs to pretend to be this guy who's interested in seeing and finding a genuine snuff film. And it's really fascinating to watch him go through that journey. There's also a remarkably good cast in this movie. Nicolas Cage, great actor, and then James Gandolfini before he really blew up with Sopranos. Peter Stormare, another one of those actors who's can just be so off-puttingly creepy. He's a really dynamic actor. I love him in everything he does. Joaquin Phoenix, an unknown Joaquin Phoenix, is in this movie. He's a scene stealer. He's actually a bright spot of comedy throughout this movie.
Nice.
I think it's some of his best work. He's really good. Anthony Held, who's a character actor that you've probably seen 100 times. Really good, creepy guy as well. Some other notable people, Catherine Keener. That's about it for the cast. There's some other people I don't want to spoil. But it's a really great cast, and everyone, I'm just amazed at how well everyone fit into their roles, given how, again, beyond taboo this subject is. Right. I hope I didn't go too far or too deep with that, but
that was great.
It's just, I think I can totally understand why no one would want to see this movie, because it's so disturbing, but at the same time, it's an incredible medium in which to tell a story, an environment to tell a story. It's really fascinating that someone can build a story like this in their mind and express it and turn it into a script and a movie. It just really fascinates me that this movie exists. I'll say that.
Right.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this movie in a while, like I said, and I remember being just really engaged with it from the story perspective. And yeah, it's one of those movies that I really need to revisit. And as a brief tangent, have you seen the movie Snake Eyes?
I have,
Nicolas Cage?
Yeah, I have.
I kind of want to do like a double feature of Snake Eyes and 8mm because they both involve detectives and stuff. I don't know how tonally they match, but that's my input on that.
Gotcha. The movie's also notably directed by Joel Schumacher. He had no business directing this movie.
Oh yeah.
I think he did a good job. I think it's arguably his best work. But David Fincher would have the movie would be almost unwatchable because it would get under your skin so much. I think if he had made it, it would be like NC-17 and just like.
I think he was originally supposed to direct it.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be even better if he had done it, I think. So
right.
It's a good movie if you're the right kind of person. I'll put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're as messed up as Tiny is, you'll love this movie.
Yeah. It's beyond macabre.
Right. Okay, we'll start kind of winding down a little bit on the topic because we're going a little long.
Yeah.
Next up is 2005's Brick from Rian Johnson, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. This movie, holy crap! I watched it recently. When I say recently, I mean like about a year ago. Rewatched it recently, I should say, and this is a movie that can be super off-putting to people if they're not really sure how to get into it or what they're expecting. It's a Rian Johnson movie. It's about a teenage loner. I'm going to read the plot description from IMDb. A teenage loner pushes his way into the underworld of a high school crime ring to investigate the disappearance of his ex-girlfriend. And this movie stands apart from so many other movies, of so many of its contemporaries, that it has the dialogue is so uniquely like classic film noir, and it's this weird hybrid of like kind of current movie or type of dialogue and classic noir. It kind of invents its own kind of language. It's a really interesting, and it's interesting in that the entire world of like everyone talks like this in this movie, and I can see how it can be off-putting for some people if they're not really expecting it, but when you go in with that expectation and you know that that's what they were going for and you know what you're in for, it's a really interesting movie, and the performances are freaking fantastic.
Yeah.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt is unreal. And I just love it. And there's some great like little detective moments. Like Joseph Gordon-Levitt is in the trunk of a car, and he uses like he uses just like little tricks to figure out where he's going.
Yeah.
Remembering like the route and everything, just so he doesn't get lost when he's being abducted in the back of a trunk.
Right.
Just really, really great movie. Really fun stuff. Tiny, what do you think of Brick?
Again, a really brilliant idea for a movie. It's the juxtaposition that really brings it home and makes it a one-of-a-kind movie, because you have the juxtaposition of what's essentially a crime syndicate, which is a super adult, scary kind of thing, but you mesh it in the universe of a high school and a bunch of teenagers that are dumb.
Right.
It's a goofy thing that shouldn't work, but because the writer-director Rian Johnson is so brilliant and is such a great storyteller, he just wove these two universes together in such a satisfying way. I agree. It's a difficult movie to find. It's hard to find an in. It's hard to like work your way into the universe as the viewer. The first time I saw this movie, I think I shut it off because I borrowed it from you on your recommendation, and like I borrowed the DVD from you. Yeah, and I had it and I gave it back to you like the next week because I was like I couldn't get into it, dude. And then I saw it in college and I was like, what the hell was I thinking?
Right.
It's such a cool movie, and it's so. You've never seen another movie like this. I mean, you think a detective movie and a noirish investigation movie. You've seen, 100 of them and you know what you're going to get, but you really don't with this. It's so fascinating, and a few times it's hilarious and it's really dark and kind of disturbing at other moments. It's such a unique movie, and I agree the cast is just out of this world. Nora Zeitner as well was one of the kind of the female lead. She was really good in this as well. Lucas Haas, great actor. This again, a super unique movie, and I think a lot of people don't know about this movie, and that's a shame. It's a really, really fascinating entry in this genre, and I think people should see it.
Absolutely, and it's so awesome that the director is now making Star Wars Episode 8.
Yeah, he's really worked his way up.
He has. That's amazing.
Yeah. Rightfully so. He's awesome.
Oh, absolutely. He's fantastic.
I love Rian Johnson.
Oh, yeah. His work on Breaking Bad is just unreal.
Yeah. And I was a big fan of Looper as well.
Me too.
Like that movie a lot.
Absolutely. So let's see. We should kind of rapid fire the rest.
Yeah.
If you want. Do you want to bring up Gone Girl? Or not Gone Girl. Do you want to bring us into the next one? Do you want to bring us into the next one?
I'd love to. Up next is 2007's Gone Baby Gone, directorial debut of Ben Affleck, I believe. Cast his little brother in the main role. And this is based on a novel. The author's name is escaping me at the moment, but he wrote a handful of books about like being a private investigator, and they were pretty successful and really good novels from what I understand. This is another one of those movies that has just like a monumental cast. Michelle Monaghan, Casey Affleck, Ed Harris, Morgan Freeman, Titus Welliver, Amy Madigan, Amy Ryan, nominated for an Oscar in this. Michael Kenneth Williams, who we're big fans of. Just an incredible cast in this movie, and everybody was just off the charts good. I thought Michelle Monaghan's character was a little limited, but she was still involved in the story and integral to it in a way. This is a really cool movie, and it's again kind of standard. It's a missing child investigation, and you have a private investigator who's clashing with the police. Those are kind of classic tropes for this genre. But again, I think you have uniqueness through the setting, and I think the character is pretty cool and very. He has a lot of lofty ideas, and he is an idealist, which is it plays out very interestingly at the end. I think that's what sets this movie apart. And it's an environment we're familiar with, and it still manages to set itself apart that way. I think the characters really take this movie to the next level. There's also a twist, which is it's a well done twist, I think.
Oh yeah.
It's a really good movie, and I mean Ben Affleck did a great job on his first shot.
Really strong debut, directorial debut.
Absolutely.
And I love Casey Affleck in this movie.
Yeah.
I really do.
I think a lot of people didn't realize how good of an actor he was.
Same here. I agree.
Before this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's based on the novel Gone Baby Gone by Dennis Lehane.
Thank you. There we go.
He wrote a bunch of episodes of The Wire as well. He was a writer on The Wire.
Awesome. I didn't know that.
Yep. And it's part of the Kenzie Gennaro series of novels, just private eye novels, which I remember seeing Gone Baby Gone and thinking like, man, I hope that they make more. Like they make more of this series with these characters and everything.
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning that Ben Affleck's next movie, Live by Night, is an adaptation of another Dennis Lehane movie.
Cool.
Or novel, not part of the that Private Eye series, but it's about Prohibition era crime, which obviously I'm a big fan of.
Did he write Mystic River as well?
He did.
I thought so, yeah.
Yep. And Shutter Island.
Wow, okay.
Oh yeah.
Dang.
Really, like, man, I really want to get into his novels.
Yeah.
And read some of his work. But Gone Baby Gone is a really strong detective novel. I really like how kind of unproven Casey Affleck feels as the private eye. Like he's
got a chip on his shoulder.
He does, yeah. And he's kind of this. You kind of get the sense that he has like he isn't like the know-it-all kind of like Humphrey Bogart type of private eye.
Yeah.
From Maltese Falcon. He's the guy that's kind of, like I said, kind of proven himself and trying to prove himself that he can succeed.
He kind of stumbles through the investigation. He makes a lot of mistakes and stuff.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned this before, how I'm kind of almost weary of those characters that are like flawless. Mm-hmm. Like when we were talking about Jack Reacher in our 2016 Rest of the Year episode, like that's who he is. He never makes a mistake. He's perfect. He's an incredible marksman. He's all these things, and he never makes a mistake. But it's I think what makes characters more interesting are their flaws and their shortcomings and idiosyncrasies, and his character in this movie is definitely one of those people. So yeah, I think again that's what the characters are what makes this movie really good.
Absolutely. And so let's just let's start to kind of. I keep saying this every time I switch to the topic. We have a couple more to go through. Just really briefly, Zodiac from 2007, another Fincher movie. Mm-hmm. Really great at depicting the kind of procedural aspect of it, or the. One thing that we haven't really discussed that much when talking about this topic of detective movies is one of the kind of defining characteristics of them, and something that is embodied very well in these last two movies that we're going to discuss. But the idea of the detective or the person investigating the crime, the nature of obsession.
Yeah.
And Zodiac has that so great. It works that so well. So Jake Gyllenhaal is a cartoonist in San Francisco at the time of the Zodiac murders, and I love the fact that he is this kind of, he's so consumed with this this drive, this obsession with it, that he becomes his own little amateur detective on the case. And it's something I adore about this type of movie, is that the investigation, the story, the mystery surrounding the crime that's happened becomes such a focal point of a character's life that it just consumes everything and threatens to destroy their personal relationships, and it could come at the expense of their lives. And just Zodiac was a really great depiction of that, and what it takes to be a detective or be an amateur detective. hunting down clues and investigating a crime.
Absolutely, yeah, and also Mark Ruffalo trying to strike a balance between trusting this complete novice who's a civilian trying to thrust his way into this investigation, basically, and also being a cop with integrity and stuff like that. That's an interesting exploration I enjoyed in this movie. My favorite scene of this movie involves John Carroll Lynch, who's become one of my favorite character actors. He was stunning in this movie. There's one scene in particular where he's questioned that I had no idea what I was watching. Like he was so enigmatic during that scene and just like unpredictable, and you didn't know what he was going to say next. And it's like he incriminates himself, but he doesn't. And it's like he's just a normal guy, but he's not. He's really ambiguous and creepy, and I was absolutely stunned by John Carroll Lynch in this movie. He became one of my favorite character actors after I saw this.
Absolutely.
It's just I echo everything Matt said. It's a really good movie, and unfortunately underrated. I don't think a ton of people saw it. It was critically acclaimed, but not a good box office, I think.
Yeah, when you kind of talk about David Fincher, which at some point we'll have to do a retrospective.
We have to, yeah.
But when you talk about David Fincher, Zodiac doesn't necessarily seem to come up that often. It's always like Fight Club, Seven, Gone Girl, or
Social Network.
Social Network, yeah. Wow. But Zodiac kind of gets maybe not cast aside, but it's deserving of more praise than what it gets.
Agreed.
Yep. So do you want to round us out for this topic, Tiny?
Absolutely. Our last one is Prisoners from 2013. We talked about this mostly, I think, in our end of the year discussion, I want to say, for 2014. I think we all held it in pretty high regard. I think it made the top 10 of maybe all three of us for that year.
I think so.
So I think that's when we talked about it the most, our 2014 wrap up. This movie is, again, very underappreciated. Really good cast. Ironically, also stars Jake Gyllenhaal. I don't know why this movie didn't take off. It's really a shame. The director is the guy that I can never remember his name.
Denis Villeneuve.
There you go, Denis Villeneuve. I couldn't think of his name. But it's a movie that came out that was really underappreciated, and it's really a shame because this has the story meanders in very different ways and highs and lows. There's lots of peaks and valleys too. You think you have everything figured out, and then you don't. It all comes crashing down, and you have a lot of kind of moral or ethical gray areas throughout the movie.
Yes.
It's really interesting to explore those, and they go to some of the extremes with this movie, and it's really cool to watch. You have a lot of everymen who are thrust into extraordinary situations in this movie, and I think that's what makes it really good. It's also visually really visually feast. I mean, it's really impressive. For just a detective movie, you wouldn't expect so many cool so much cool camera work and filters and angles, and the color palette is very basic but somehow pretty rich. I can't really explain that, but it's an interesting dynamic they had with the colors in this movie. It's incredibly well done.
Absolutely. I agree completely, and I it's a movie that I need to revisit. I haven't seen it since I saw it the first time. But yeah, it's what I love about it is it takes, like you said, it takes ordinary people and puts them in extraordinary situations, and it blurs the line of like right and wrong and what's it struck with certain characters' humanity and how they kind of lose their humanity in the process of pursuing justice. It's a great depiction of that. I absolutely loved it. So that's Prisoners, and we'll kind of wrap up a little bit here on the topic with a quick rundown of some of the things that some listener feedback or what was. So basically, on yesterday, I posted on the Facebook page or on the Facebook group a poll for what's everyone's favorite detective movie and why. 7 won, hands down. And then LA Confidential was second. And then we got some interesting inclusions on the added into the poll. There was Fallen by Matt and Draco. He threw that on there. Shaft was also added. Fargo. So we got some good responses there, and I'll just read through some of the comments we received. So Matt and Draco said, "I'm not 100% sure that Fallen with Denzel Washington and John Goodman qualifies as a detective movie, but I think it's close enough and obviously the best choice." Which, have you ever seen Fallen, Tiny?
I don't think I have, actually.
I remember seeing bits and pieces of it when I was a kid, but it's such an intriguing concept. It's like, I'm going to look it up real quick and then, it's, the premise, according to IMDb, is a homicide detective John Hobbs witnesses the execution of serial killer Edgar Reese. Soon after the execution, the killings start again, and they are very similar to Reese's style.
Wow.
So the movie is essentially the spirit of the serial killer kind of embodies like just random pedestrians. And it's just, I remember thinking that's such an intriguing concept and such a thrilling concept.
Yeah.
So I'll have to go back and check that out.
Me too.
Yep. And then longtime listener Yasmin commented with, "Prisoners is actually my favorite, but Zodiac is brilliant too. I love the cinematography in both films, and Jake Gyllenhaal is also great in both," which I definitely agree with. Frequent guest Robert Feckus said, "LA Confidential, without a doubt. Not a bad performance from anyone in the cast, and the feel of 50s LA is so well done. Love this movie and never get tired of it." And then let's see. Oh, Brandon Yoder from Billy and Brandon Watch Movies and Synapshot Productions. He asked if Silence of the Lambs or a Bond movie would count. Which I thought was interesting. And it's funny because the rest of the comments kind of fall into similar kind of things. We debated on adding Silence of the Lambs, but I think on its sheer technicality, it was more of a thriller about an FBI agent, so it's not really detective.
It fits better into other genres.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then Bond is just a spy movie.
Yeah.
But I like where Brandon's head was at with that.
Yeah, definitely.
And then to round it out, Chad from The Secular Perspective said, "Why is Harriet the Spy not on the list?" Which I thought was pretty funny.
Nice.
And then Matt and Draco also responded with Spy Kids. So I think we need to do a spy movie episode.
Totally.
Yeah.
There's some great ones out there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So once again, you guys can check out the Facebook group. Just go to facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer. You'll find a link to the Facebook group there. And so that does it for this week's main topic for detective movies. And so we're going to go ahead and go into Potpourri. Before we do that, by the way, Potpourri, for the first-time listeners, is the section of the podcast where we wind down the topic or wind down the episode and talk about just stuff we've seen lately or things we're looking forward to, and then kind of end things, wind it down. And before we go to that, here's a promo for Shocktober in Irvington, which once again is October 14th at the Irving Theater here in Indianapolis in Irvington. ShocktoberInIrvington.com for more details. And thank you to JP Leck for creating this promo for us.
Tickets are on sale now for the 3rd annual Shocktober in Irvington, presented by the Obsessive Viewer podcast. Join the hosts of the Obsessive Viewer on October 14th, 2016 at the Irving Theater for a one-night event screening of short horror films, including the premiere screenings of J.P. Leck's The Roman, the latest entry in his cross-medium Elsewhere World universe, as well as the latest slasher from Snapshot Productions and Billy and Brandon Watch Movies. All of this and so much more. Come celebrate the horror genre in the historic Irvington area and get a chance to meet the filmmakers with live interviews after each screening. You can also win DVDs, Blu-rays, and gift cards to Irvington businesses. Tickets are on sale now at ShocktoberInIrvington.com. All proceeds will go directly to the Irvington Historical Society. And we will see you at the Irving Theater on October 14th. That is, if you dare.
Okay, so thanks again, JP, for that, and we look forward to seeing everyone at Shocktober in Irvington 3. So, for Potpourri this week, Tiny, I have 2 things, and you have 2 things?
Yeah.
You have 2 things?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm going to get us kicked off, kind of in the same vein as our main topic, which we could also at some point we'll have to revisit detective movies and just do like TV detectives, for sure.
Totally.
And so it kind of falls into this category. I've been watching the TV show Bosch on Amazon. Yep, which by the way, Amazon Prime Instant has a really great selection.
Nice.
Like really, really fantastic. And Bosch is a show, it's an Amazon original that I brought up on a previous episode of the podcast. I just watched the pilot episode, but I didn't watch any further. Mm-hmm. So I went ahead and I was in between shows, so I went ahead and jumped into Bosch and watched the entire first season. And I'm now 3 episodes into season 2. This is a really, really strong detective cop show. Mm-hmm. It's got Titus Welliver as the title character of Bosch, who is this kind of hard-nosed detective, or this kind of like gruff, tough guy kind of guy. And what's really great is that the stories in each season have been really interesting and engaging. They're based on a series of novels by Michael Connelly that have been running for a long time. So the first season kind of is centered around this murder case of these bones that are recovered that were the kid died 20 years ago. So it's a cold case. And so what I really loved about it is that it went through, like, it didn't become just about that case. It became this kind of game of cat and mouse between Bosch and the police department and this criminal who may or may not have something to do with that crime. And it's really fascinating. It's a really strong first season for a detective show, and I highly recommend checking it out. It's got some really fantastic actors in it too.
Nice.
Yeah, Jamie Hector, who played Marlo Stansfield in The Wire. Cool. He plays Bosch's partner. And then also it's as one of the so like detective TV shows, they kind of have, or cop shows always kind of have this kind of like, it seems like they always have this like kind of token detective or pair of detectives who are kind of like the B team, or like they're kind of like background characters or background detectives that they don't really do much in the background or in the forefront, but they're kind of there to kind of add characters to like the bullpen.
Okay.
So anyway, there are two characters in Bosch named, their nicknames are Crate and Barrel. They're a pair of detectives. But what's funny is that one of them, and this was almost distracting to me because I recognized one of them from somewhere, but I couldn't put my finger on it. But it's like one of those times where an actor's like cadence and the way that they talk and the way that they move and the way that they carry themselves, like really like it sticks with you, and it just made me think like I've seen him from somewhere. And when it clicked with me, it was almost like I couldn't separate him from this role that I know him from. He was the guy who played Luther in It's Always Sunny, Mac's dad. I don't blink.
Oh my god, that's funny.
Yeah, and it's so cool to see him as just a detective. But it's just like in the back of my mind, I was like, it's a creepy, super creepy guy, an intense guy from It's Always Sunny. But yeah, so Bosch is a really great show. I highly recommend checking it out. I'm 3 episodes into season 2. It's a new case. It's a new story. And there's some really interesting stuff. Also, other actors that are involved in it. Lance Reddick plays he plays the deputy chief, who he's just phenomenal. Yeah. There's a really great subplot in season 2 involving his son, who's a police officer in the show. And it's in his season 2 arc, he's interacting with the guy who played, I think is his name John Ransom? He played Ziggy in The Wire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's his name.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. Like he is outstanding. So I highly recommend checking out Bosch. If you haven't yet, please do. It's on Amazon Prime, 10 episodes per season. Really strong show. I highly recommend it.
Nice.
Yep.
I definitely want to check that out. I love Titus Welliver.
Oh, he's phenomenal.
Nice.
It's so great to see him in just a leading role like this.
Nice.
Has so much depth to it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Well, kind of a running theme here. This was unintentional, but I wanted to give my final thoughts on the miniseries The Night Of, which concluded like a month ago. I meant to bring it up sooner in Potpourri, a more timely, better timing a couple of weeks ago, but just other things I wanted kind of popped into my head, and I wanted to talk about them then. So, but I wanted to address this because I was blown away by this miniseries.
Yeah?
It was so good.
Nice.
I mean, HBO already holds the throne for miniseries because I think, even after watching this, I think Band of Brothers is the best miniseries ever made.
Yeah.
And HBO has several other good ones in John Adams and The Pacific, and they just really know how to do a miniseries. And I've heard people on the inside talk about how that format is really going out the door. It's really hard to make money off of it. And so we don't really get that many miniseries anymore. It's much easier for them to just make a movie or something. So,
right.
I was kind of surprised that this actually existed, that someone actually made this. But now I know why, because the writers for this, just absolutely nailed it. Steven Zalian is one of the main writers. He works with HBO a lot. This is just an incredible exploration of the criminal justice system. It goes from the very beginning all the way to the end. I'll admit my bias in that I have a degree in criminal justice and I wanted to be a police officer for a long time, and so I'm automatically fascinated by this stuff. But I think most people would be intrigued by this show because it's a real thing. The criminal justice system is something that everybody knows a little bit about, and it's kind of it's sort of a mystery to a lot of people. And I think this series really demonstrates how flawed it is and how it's kind of a broken system, and it's not really about, we see the words justice and truth as sort of synonyms of one another, but they really, this series shows you how they have nothing to do with each other. Justice is not about finding the truth. It's about conclusion. It's about getting through it. That's all it is. It's not about finding the truth. And that's the unfortunate state of our criminal justice system. And this series shines a light on that. Like I said, it starts from the beginning. You have a guy who commits a crime and it goes all the way to the end of his trial.
Nice.
So it's like an entire adjudication of a crime, of a case. And a lot of shows and movies, you don't see that. It's not cut and dry. It's not the entire picture, but this, you get every single thing. It's you get to see what it's like to be arrested and discussing things with your lawyer, how police will try to trick you when you're being investigated, how they will, kind of play with the line of what's ethical and what's actually legal. And, there's kind of gray areas, and they really, even very respected detectives will play with that line and kind of cross it from time to time. It's about, they depict what it's like to try to just survive prison. There's this kid who's on trial. He hasn't been convicted of anything, but he's in jail for months and months and months, and he has to try to find a way to survive that. People die every day in prison, and it's an awful environment to be in, and this kid who's presumed innocent has to survive that. And it's about how he has to find it within himself to get through that. And it's an incredibly dark thing, and it's depicted really well in this. Also, the back and forth between defense attorneys, prosecutors, and investigators it's like a dance. It's really it's really disturbing to me that the nonchalance with which these people deal back and forth with each other's, with people's lives. You're talking about the well-being and the livelihood of this kid, essentially this 22-year-old kid who's alleged of committing this crime, and they talk about him like he's a bargaining chip. And it's a really disturbing thing, but you kind of have to put yourself in their shoes and understand why they act that way. And I think it was a pretty scathing indictment of the criminal justice system, which is a sentence I used a handful of times when we talked about Making a Murderer.
Right.
I think this miniseries is a great, fantastic double feature between Making a Murderer and The Night Of, because one is a true story and it's a documentary. The The Night of is like a dramatization of that, and it explores every facet of what it's like to be submerged into that subculture, and it just nails everything on the head. And I was just blown away by this miniseries. The detail of it is just beyond impressive. I really recommend that everyone sees it. It's 8 episodes. Is that what it was? I think it's 8 episodes. Mm-hmm. The last one's about an hour and a half, but all the rest are 50 minutes to an hour. It's fantastic. I didn't mention the cast. I mentioned the cast the last time I talked about it. Riz Ahmed in the lead is fantastic. Bill Camp is the lead detective. Really incredible. Some of John Turturro's best work, without question. Nice. It's just, and like everything about the miniseries was just on point. I can't recommend it enough.
Nice.
I'd give it like a 9.8, 9.9 out of 10. That's how good.
Wow.
That's how good
Holy
it was.
crap.
I mean, it's like I'd hold it in the highest esteem. Basically, it's phenomenal.
Very cool. So
Yeah.
that's The Night of, and it
Yep.
is currently on HBO Go and HBO Now. I am definitely planning on watching this very soon. It's kind of on my radar for what I'm going to watch after I finish Bosch season 2. So don't want to cross streams, but
Yeah,
literally cross streams because streaming
nice.
Amazon Prime and HBO Go.
That's funny.
Anyway, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really excited for it to watch it. So my next potpourri, and this will be kind of brief, I guess. I went to the theater and I watched Blair Witch.
Cool.
Yeah, so this is a movie that I kind of championed for us to review, but I got vetoed and shot down.
Yes, you did.
In favor of Snowden, which is fine. So I went to see it, and for some background for me, the found footage genre is a movie genre that I once revered. I really loved. Paranormal Activity was one of my favorites. Horror movies of the last decade or so, and I just loved that concept for a movie, and it all started in the mainstream with Blair Witch and their very inventive marketing strategy, or Blair Witch Project, I should say. So when the Blair Witch Project came out, I loved it as well. It's always hit a bit of diminishing returns for me every time I see it after that now. But it's still like that original experience I really loved. I love that it ushered in this whole subgenre. So seeing Blair Witch, I was consumed with this feeling throughout about the halfway mark to the end. I've had this overwhelming feeling that, I love the found footage movie or the found footage movie genre. And this is a great movie to just say goodbye to it forever. It's not that Blair Witch was a bad movie. It really wasn't that bad. There are some things that are kind of, I wasn't too fond of. Like the movie is about the brother of Heather from the first movie going into the woods of Burkittsville, Maryland to try to find his sister 20 years later. Or find out what happened after some video footage is recovered, and they go into the woods to investigate. So, one thing that this movie does, kind of cleverly, I guess, is they introduce new technology. They have a drone. They have these these cool like Bluetooth headsets that have cameras in them that. Like the technology, I'm sure it doesn't exist, especially not in that level of that quality of video quality. But I mean, it's a clever little gag to let them have kind of more conventional filmmaking of shot on one person and then showing the next person, cutting to the next person, so it's not as shaky cam and disorienting. So I thought I appreciated that. But beat for beat, this movie follows a formula, and it's very disappointing that Adam Wingard and Simon Barrett, who made You're Next and The Guest, two movies that are very effective and very effective and very much a meld of subverting their respective genres and paying homage to them. like Your Next being a home invasion movie, The Guest being kind of this 80s thriller action type of movie. So those movies pay tribute while also, kind of subverting your expectations of those genres. So going into Blair Witch, I kind of thought like, okay, wow, they're going to do this for found footage and like straight up horror movies like that. And I thought that's going to be great. Didn't do much of anything at all with it. It was such a letdown. Didn't do much of anything. There's some clever things here and there. There's some things that worked for me later in the movie, but for the most part, it just did not have an effect on me the way that I wanted it to. And I just kept thinking, like, we've seen pretty much everything we can see that's worth seeing in the found footage genre, and this is just it. I'm not gonna get excited about a found footage movie. I'm gonna kind of just part ways with it, and if a found footage movie comes out that looks cool, I'll check it out, but it's not gonna be, the found footage is not gonna be what gets my ass in the seat.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
I agree. I think it's a little played out. Mm-hmm. It's gone as far as it can, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We've seen a superhero movie with Chronicle. We've seen, I haven't actually seen this, but Project Greenlight, or not Project Greenlight, but what was the time travel movie one? It used to be like Welcome to Yesterday or something, but they rechanged it when they had it in theaters. Project Almanac. Project Almanac was a time travel movie. They even had the stupid one night party movie with Project X.
Project X.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. And I was thinking, like, the only thing we haven't seen that I can think of is like a romantic drama or romantic comedy, which that might get me excited to see.
I'd be intrigued by that.
Totally, but that's about it. And Blair Witch just wasn't effective for me.
Yeah, well, the horror genre kind of beat it to death. I mean,
definitely.
Action and comedy maybe could still have some legs, but yeah, horror found footage is done.
Yep,
in my book, anyways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so Blair Witch wasn't that great or effective for me.
Gotcha.
And also, like, some of the character interactions, like, there's not much there for on a character level. Like, there's kind of this hot-headed character who's hot-headed for a reason. Like they're in the woods with this guy I appreciated this guy who is kind of it's shown that there's conflict between the guy and the guy that they're in the woods with, because they meet the guy at his house and he has like a what is the Confederate flag?
Okay.
And so it's just like a subtle, like, oh, this guy's racist and the other guy that's part of the group is black, so there's going to be animosity between them. And it's just more just the guy that's part of the group, the black guy, is like just doesn't want any of his crap, and and he's not like an overt racist or anything. He's just like, he has a grudge against him from the start, and that has some very effective conflict between them. But that's about, like, we don't get much else about any of the characters, really. We know that one is the brother of the girl from the Blair Witch Project, but then, like, their first night, I think it's revealed that he's dating one of the girls that's in the group, but it's not set up that it should be a mystery or that it should be anything worthwhile. But there's dialogue that kind of makes it seem like it should be like this, like, oh, they're being secretive about it, but it doesn't go anywhere. It's just it's really kind of a mess, and it's a disappointment.
That's a shame.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's Blair Witch. It's in theaters now. Tiny, do you want to round us out for Potpourri in the episode?
Absolutely, yeah. I really wanted to very briefly mention my opinion of Green Room, which I watched over the weekend, and Matt championed quite a bit when he brought it up several episodes ago. Bold statement, I think it's right now my movie of the year.
Really?
Like, I think right now it's in my number one spot.
Very nice.
I doubt it'll stay there, but it's probably going to be a top 3, top 5 of the year. The movie was so just like so visually immersive and so visceral. I had a physical reaction to it. I was my stomach was upset by the time I finished the movie. Like that's and that's not a normal thing. I don't even with like gory movies like the movies we mentioned tonight, 7 and 8 millimeter. That doesn't happen to me. I was physically ill at the end of this movie, and in the best way possible. I hope Jeremy Saulnier, if you're listening, I mean that as the highest compliment possible. The movie was just so. I've said this again several times tonight, but you've never seen a movie like this. This is such a unique movie, and its simplicity is what makes it so good. It's just about these people trying to survive a situation, and it's a very simple premise, but the dynamics are really unique, and it's just such a cool movie, and it's just you don't really know what's going to happen next. You know, there's going to be a lot of action. There's going to be some people are going to die. Some crazy shit's going to happen, but you just don't know exactly what it's going to be. And I was just absolutely blown away by the movie. I loved all of the cast. Patrick Stewart's never even tried to tackle a character like this.
He's so good.
He is, and he's such a leading kind of guy, and he seems so like pure and good as a person, and all the characters he's ever played, and he's just this horrible, villainous,
incredibly
vacuous, empty, horrible person in this movie, and it's
very threatening.
Yeah, very threatening and calculating, very calculated, and sees all the angles. It's just not what you would expect from Patrick Stewart at all, and he just knocks it out of the frickin' park.
Absolutely.
The late Anton Yelchin, I've never missed him more. His death really sunk in when I saw this, because I was like, we're never going to get to see him do this again, and it's really a shame because he was just great.
Yeah.
The movie, what happens in the movie is so crazy. I can't imagine the conversations that Jeremy Saulnier had with the actors, like, so in this scene, I'm going to need you to get your hand chopped off. It's just like, how do you have these conversations with these actors? How do you put this on paper and have people try to do it? It's just, I'm really amazed at what they achieved with the movie. And I think Jeremy Saulnier just needs to take, or Saulnier, I don't know how you pronounce his name.
I think Saulnier.
Saulnier, okay. He just needs to take off like a rocket ship, and I think he's the next, like, P.T. Anderson, David Fincher kind of director, Rian Johnson kind of director. I think he's going to reach that level within the next 5 to 10 years, and he absolutely deserves to.
I absolutely agree, and I gushed upon Green Room and back in OV187, and yeah, I agree completely. It's such a great movie, and it's so amazing because, and I think I may have mentioned this in OV187, but what's great is that he was riding high off of Blue Ruin. So when Blue Ruin came out, he got just a ton of offers from big studios to tackle he was in, but he chose to make Green Room instead because he knew that he couldn't make that movie the way he wanted to make it inside the studio system. Right. So it's amazing to me that creatively he had the forethought to think like, okay, well, I want to do what I want to do first, and then just dive in. So I'm excited to see what type of work he does in the future, because he seems like he has such a great head on his shoulders. Yeah. And it's amazing to me, and it's inspiring too, that he sunk in his entire, everything, his entire life savings, his credit, everything into making Blue Ruin, and now he has Green Room, and now he's gonna go places. Absolutely. And he's fantastic. I love both of his movies. Yeah.
As a result of it, I just jumped immediately to his IMDb just to read trivia about the movie and about him and everything. And he has 3 feature films, Green Room, Blue Ruin, and his first major feature film was called Murder Party. Right. I've never seen it. There wasn't really, you could watch it on, I think, Google Play had it. And so I went to Amazon to look at it, and the DVD was like $6, so I just bought it. Nice. Blind bought it. I got it in the mail today. I'm going to watch it pretty soon, and hopefully in the next few weeks or month or so, I can report back on Potpourri about my thoughts on that movie. So
sweet. Yeah. I very much look forward to that.
Awesome.
All right, so that about does it for this week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer, and Next week, Tiny, I think we're going to do a Netflix Picks episode.
Yes, sir.
Yep, and in honor of it being episode 188, we are each we're changing up the Netflix Picks style a little bit. In episodes past, we would take a random number from our Netflix queue and watch them and review them for the podcast. But in honor of it being the 188th episode, not that that's any milestone at all, but we're going to watch the 188th movie or show that's on our Netflix queues in that spot. So, Tiny, what is your number 188 Netflix?
Mine is the movie Antichrist by Lars von Trier. Very controversial movie. I don't even know a lot about it, but I know it would not be played in a lot of different places. Like countries around the world actually wouldn't allow it to be shown in theaters. Very controversial. He is a really interesting filmmaker, a very I don't even know how to describe him, but the stuff of his that I've seen, he's one of a kind of guy. So I'm looking forward to it.
Sweet. I'm looking forward to your thoughts on that, and I might try to watch it too, but I can't make any guarantees.
Okay.
But my number 188 on Netflix is a documentary.
Nice.
Such is life with these Netflix picks for me. But it's a documentary that is one that I've wanted to see for a long time. I've never gotten around to seeing it, and I finally have an excuse to watch it now. Dear Zachary. This is a documentary that I'm glad that I don't know anything about it, because apparently it's one of those documentaries that it's best to go in not knowing anything because you are going to bawl your eyes out.
You will.
So
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it. So we'll have that next week on the podcast. And once again, check out ShocktoberInIrvington.com for tickets for Shocktober in Irvington. Here on October 14th. And also, I haven't mentioned this, but check out my solo side project podcast, Anthology, where I'm reviewing bonus episodes, reviewing Black Mirror each episode. And it's still going strong. So check that out at anthologypod.com. And Tiny, is there anything else that we need to cover?
I do not believe so.
All right. Well, in that case, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, thanks again for listening to episode 187 of the Obsessive Viewer podcast. I'm going to just throw out a couple quick announcements here in this little section here. So once again, Shocktober in Irvington, October 14th. And I'm very pleased to announce that we just got a new prize for it. If you come to Shocktober in Irvington, you could potentially get a 10-pack of Heartland Film Festival tickets. It's a pack of 10 Heartland Film Festival ticket vouchers. Heartland is a great film festival that's going to be going from October 20th to the 30th this year, and it's fantastic. I really love it. So very excited for that, and we'll also be giving away DVDs of Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, the entire Saw franchise, The Shining, Trick or Treat, The Collector, a bunch of stuff. And also, speaking again about Heartland Film Festival, if you go to Heartland, if you're planning on going to Heartland Film Festival and want to support the Obsessive Viewer, what you can do is when you buy your tickets online at heartlandfilm.com, what you can do is enter the promo code OBSESS16, and every ticket that you buy for Heartland Film Festival with that code, Heartland will send us $2. And it's a huge, that's a fantastic promotion, and it's a great program. And they announced their lineup this year, and it looks like it's going to be a really great festival. So if you plan on going, please use the code OBSESS16, and that way we can get a little bit of money from Heartland, and you also save a few dollars if you buy online tickets for Heartland. So once again, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time for our Netflix Picks episodes, and then soon enough there will be Shocktober in Irvington. All right, well, anyway, thanks guys.
Thank you for listening to The Obsessive Viewer, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find more of our episodes at ovpodcast.com and you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or your preferred podcast app. The Obsessive Viewer's theme song is An Eclipse of Events and is provided by Loudlike from their EP Mistakes We Must Make. You can find that and more great music from them on iTunes and like their Facebook page at facebook.com/loudlikemusic. Any and all feedback on the podcast is encouraged. You can email the hosts individually at Matt, Tiny, or Mike at obsessiveviewer.com or send an email to the podcast in general at podcast@obsessiveviewer.com. Check out the Obsessive Viewer blog at obsessiveviewer.com, where we post movie and TV reviews and the occasional editorial about the business of entertainment. You can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer and follow us on Twitter at obsessiveviewer, at obsessivetiny, and at IamMikeWhite. If you want more obsessive content in your life, check out our sister site, obsessivebooknerd.com, for book reviews, author spotlights, and a general celebration of reading. Finally, if you're philosophically curious, check out Tiny's side project podcast, The Secular Perspective, which explores the concepts of faith, religion, and existence from the perspective of secular hosts. You can find that at thesecularperspective.com and subscribe to the podcast on the podcatcher of your choice. Again, thank you so much for listening. We love you. Be excellent to each other.